Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another podcast with your hosts, Aeon Wraith and RedShadow.
Hello. Today we're going to be talking about anime versus light novel versus manga, how they interconnect and how they differ from each other, the goods, the bads, the pros, the cons.
So, I'm going to start with a rant here because I am a very firm believer in the original product is usually the best. So, if it starts off as an anime, I like the anime the best. If it starts off as a light novel, I like the light novel the best. If it starts off as a web novel, I'm going to like that the best. So, I am going to talk right now about a particular anime that I cannot stand, even though I love the books. And I'll get into it in just a little bit, but I'm going to start with the title, which is High School DxD. Now, High School DxD, the anime, if it's one of those probably guilty pleasures for some people out there, it is essentially fan service, the show. So you have a very loose plot. Mostly it's just about seeing breasts on the screen, which is not why I'm into the book. The book series is very heavily influenced by religious ideologies and their connection between them. And it's just a badass story. Like, so I think they go up to book 20 now for the books. And book 12 is still, like, it's a wonderfully written book. Like, that book has no right to be as well written as it is, considering it's, like, it's just I say it's just a light novel, but like it is polished, it feels real, the characters are wonderfully written, and then you have the show. This piece of garbage that I'm just gonna say it shits on everything that the book set up. Because it is so obsessed with boobs and nipples that it throws away all of the work that the author did. And I mean consistently. Every single episode trashes that series. And every time a new season comes out, I'm like, I'm gonna give it the benefit of the doubt. I'm gonna see if maybe, hopefully, they fix it this time, and they never do. In fact, they go more and more off, because there are characters in that are integral to the entire show. Like, for those that don't know what High School DxD is, he starts off as a regular high school student, and he dies right in the very beginning because a fallen angel kind of kills him. And so he's resurrected as a demon. And one thing, the reason why the devil killed him is because he has like the reincarnation of an ancient dragon inside of him. And so that's where a lot of the interesting stuff comes from, is his dragon side. And unfortunately, there's a point in the story where he meets an ancient dragon that kind of teaches him how to be a dragon, sort of like teaches him, how to get stronger, how to be a better person, and that character is just raped in the show. They turn him from a dragon, like you would think of, a four-legged European dragon breathes fire, into essentially a dinosaur man that stands on two legs and is just trash.
I've seen enough of the anime to know what you're talking about. Dinosaur Man. That checks out.
And he is 100% like one of the most awesome characters in the books, because he's an ancient dragon, he's super wise, and he's pretty much seen everything go down from the beginning. He's seen God and all of the, like, Odin and everybody go toe to toe with each other. And so my brother and I will often talk about the book series and how much potential it has, because you do see some of these other, religious ideologies. You see Odin, uh, Thor. You see some of the stuff from like Romance of the Three Kingdoms, and it gets really, really interesting how they interact. And then you have the anime, which I can never get more than 2 episodes in, and it's just trash. And I see this a lot, honestly, especially with adaptations from light novels to anime, because there's a second step in there. It goes from light novel to manga to anime. And
Not
so, like,
not always, but
not always, but
90%.
and so what happens is when you go from light novel which already has a little bit of fan service in there, to manga, you get more fan service.
Right.
And again, when you go from manga to anime, you get a little bit more fan service. So what happens is by the time you get to that anime, it's about half fan service. Which sucks, especially for some of these story and character-driven plots. Like one that I'm going to bring up that I think suffered a little bit in its adaptations is Tensei Slime.
Right.
I was reincarnated as a slime. Like, okay, I started with the web novel, and I will stick with the web novels the best. And then after the web novel, we went to a manga, then a light novel, then the anime. Unfortunately, this got hit with somewhat of the George Lucas effect, is what I'm going to call it, where after it was done and finished, the author decided, well, this would have been cool to put in. But unfortunately, when you put in something that's like an entire arc that might seem cool, it throws off your pacing. So Slime, the anime in particular, and the light novels, add an entirely new antagonist in there that should not be a challenge to the main character at that time with the powers that he has. And that's, you see this a lot in anime in terms of filler.
Right.
For example, I'm going to bring up Bleach with the what are they actually called? The Bound.
I thought you were going to talk about the Zanpakuto Rebellion.
No, I'm going much earlier. The Bound arc takes place in the anime right after Ichigo has freed Rukia and he can achieve Bankai. So what the anime does for this filler arc is they literally say this: Ichigo has just forgotten how to use Bankai. He just did it the other day, but he has forgotten how to do it. Because if he had Bankai, they would not be a threat. And so it throws off the pacing and it feels off. And I see this a lot with adaptations where the author tries to add something they feel would be cool, and it doesn't quite mesh.
Right.
Now I could go on this, for a lot longer, but I'm gonna go ahead and ask, if you have any examples that you'd like to bring up.
I mean, there are tons of examples, that you can throw out there, and like, I think instead of naming just more examples, because you've already provided quite a few of them, like, my biggest thing is okay, so from a reader's perspective, I read probably a lot more than I watch, because I can read anywhere that I am. I can't always watch.
Mm-hmm.
And like, when I see, when I'm reading a book, I get really good visualizations, really good mental images of what's happening, and I can formulate that into a mental image that plays like the anime or like a movie. And a lot of people that are watching the anime, either A, they don't have time to read, or B, they don't find it enjoyable, so they prefer the anime. And to me, it goes all back into, one of the topics that we come up a lot. We talk about this topic a lot on this podcast, and that's just the instant gratification. People get bored with anime if it's not fulfilling certain aspects. If it's not giving them enough action, if it's not giving them what they want, then they don't want to watch it. And that goes right into that fan service. There are fans out there that get so irate when what they think should happen doesn't happen. We've seen that in Dragon Ball Z.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen it in other animes, that are prevalent. They get upset because something happened, and then the author's like, well, I guess I'm going to conform to what they want because, I want people to still watch my stuff. And, I mean, part of that's okay, but at the same time, like, you're letting them change your story for their benefit.
Mm-hmm. And you bring up Dragon Ball Z, which is honestly one of the best examples you could bring up, because in reality, when you watch Dragon Ball Z, you hit this at the end of the Cell Saga. It is an ending, like a perfect ending, like a wrapping up of the series. Goku's journey is done. Gohan has become the new hero of Earth, and you could tell that this is what the author had been planning, Akira Toriyama. from the get-go, from the very first arc in Dragon Ball Z, not Dragon Ball, but Dragon Ball Z. Well, the manga is a continuation, so it gets kind of murky there. But pretty much from the Saiyan Saga and Dragon Ball Z, it is much more a story about Gohan rising to become, a man or a protector, rather than it just being Goku. And the fans at that time threw such a hissy fit because, everybody loves Goku. He's really cool and all, but it overshadowed the story that the author wanted to tell, and so their love of Goku caused a new arc. Well, I don't know if it's the fans or if it was the publishers, but a new arc to come about, the Buu Saga, which again has Goku thrust back into the main character position. And then after that ended, they tried to do it again. They tried to have Dragon Ball Super being Gohan's story. Gohan rising to do all this stuff. And again, the fans, the producers, they just did not like this idea. So once again, it became about how much stronger Goku is than everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And it's unfortunate because, okay, sometimes when you're writing, like, it's nice to have feedback. You can get ideas and stuff. But at the same time, you cannot let those ideas that you hear from other people change the story you want to tell.
Right.
Like, so you brought up a little bit before about people becoming bored,
Right.
with an anime.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and this again goes to instant gratification. I'm going to bring up the anime One Piece / the manga. Because actually, as a whole, the adaptation's very good. Except for the filler arcs, which I skip anyway. But that is very much something that's not instant gratification.
Mm-hmm.
You have, first of all, every arc in that series is very long. Usually 100 or more episodes for a single story arc. Which, that's not something that someone can typically sit down and watch.
Mm-hmm. It takes a long attention span.
It doesn't just take a long attention span, it takes a long time investment.
True.
And I'll be honest, every single arc after that really builds off the previous, so it's impossible to really watch one arc separate from the others.
Right.
So you have to have put in all that time, and we were speaking about this off stream, about how One Piece has 1,000 episodes now.
Mm-hmm.
And so that means, because of the way it's written, it's something called serialized, which means that each episode follows after the other. If you have not seen episodes 1 through 999, you will not get episode 1000.
Right.
And so that is a major time investment. That is, hold on, let me, I'll calculate it later, and just how many hours you'd have to watch, because that's 1,000 episodes, 30 minutes, so that's about, 500 hours worth of watch time, which is not a little bit. And for those like myself who, I love One Piece. And so I can go back and I can rewatch those arcs and I enjoy myself. But for other people, that's much harder to grab their attention if it's not something they're interested in. Like, I love the idea of sailing and freedom. It's one reason why I liked Pirates of the Caribbean, the first one. And so One Piece appeals to me, so I'm willing to stick it out for those parts that seem a little bit more boring. Where you don't have something exciting happening. But others aren't. Like, okay, for example,
you're exactly right. I mean, it's 1,000 episodes. If they were to say they could dedicate 2 hours every day to watching One Piece, it's going to take them 250 days to watch every episode of those 1,000 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's over half a year.
And it's definitely one of those things that when you tell people about it, if they're not already into it, it's daunting to get into it.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I would, if anyone watching, if you have not seen One Piece, RedShadow, I'm also looking at you. I know you haven't seen it.
It's on my list.
I would encourage you to do so, because I believe that the payoff is worth that time investment.
Mm-hmm.
it's one of those stories, in my opinion, that yes, it takes a while to tell, but you do get that feeling of satisfaction.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely not one of those quick, watch it in the afternoon and you've seen it sort of
Right.
things.
Well, one of the other things that we could bring up is like me personally, when I read the light novels of certain animes like that have been adapted into animes, I feel like there's a lot of loss of detail and backstory when you go from one to the other, because
Definitely.
the anime is so compact and so, it's such a short time frame compared
Hmm.
to what you have in the book. They end up cutting out a lot of the backstory, a lot of the details, skipping around, here and there, and they actually cut pieces out that make perfect sense in the light novel, but
Hmm.
then they don't bring it into the anime at all.
So yeah,
Is there any examples you can give of that?
I can give several. Uh, Honestly though, I'm gonna stick with the more recent one, which is Yojo Senki. Um, Tanya, the saga of Tanya the Evil. Uh, I love the anime. Like I do. It's a great anime. It's very stylized, but it's a great anime. The books are very different. In fact, the books were kind of hard for me to read because it is so much more information. Because her the main character's mind is always moving at like 1,000 miles a minute, and so she's constantly doing like stuff in her head and telling lore and history about this world that she's in, and it's I would say about 90% is lost in the show, and like it makes it much more watchable. It makes that pacing, you know, faster, so it's more excitable to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Because it goes back to that whole time investment thing, right? But it's they're definitely different products. Um, Another one that I would bring up is actually I'm gonna go back to Tensei Slime. Even between the light novel and the anime, much more so for the web novel and the anime, but the light novel and the anime, there's a lot more information about his skills,
Mm-hmm.
and not just his skills, but like the politics and the economy in the world that he's in.
Right.
Because it's constantly it's shifting to other people's perspectives in other countries to show what they're thinking of what's happening with this monster country that's being built,
Mm-hmm.
and that sets up character, that sets up world building, which is great. But it comes back to that, you only have so much time per episode,
Right.
and one thing, I'm gonna go back to One Piece for a second, that I would say is a negative is even for like the arcs that I love, sometimes you really only have 15 minutes of content per episode because half that episode is flashback or recap, you know?
Right.
And that's kind of negative, but especially for anime where you have a much smaller time to get information across, and you have people who are not following it as religiously as I do. So you kind of have to you work with what you've got, and so that's why, especially when you're adapting to anime, they almost always change that pacing, right? That's why typically, from what I've seen, one book for a light novel series will end up being 2 to 3 episodes.
If not more.
Rarely, but yeah, because okay, so Toradora is a fantastic light novel series. If you have not read it, I recommend it. It's a slice of life rom com. It is 10 books long. The anime is 24 episodes, and so when you're a book reader, you know it may take you you know 2 hours, if that, to read the book, but you have to keep in mind that that's you reading at the speed that you normally do. If you read those books aloud, they will take much longer.
Unless
And
you
so when
talk
you
like an auctioneer.
yeah, and so you do have to cut out a lot of stuff to make that fit in a time frame.
Right.
But and again, both are very good. They're different medium, but I highly recommend both the anime and the light novel for Toradora. Um, but I'm sorry, I blanked.
Well, that's okay. I mean, blanks happen.
Yeah, sorry.
Um,
Go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna say, with the whole, anime, light novel, manga like thing, was there any was there any animes that you can think of off the top of your head that did a better job than the light novel, or maybe was a kind of a better rendition, so to speak?
That's a difficult question. Uh, I would say Yojo Senki, in my opinion. The Saga of Tanya the Evil
Hmm.
is a better anime than it was a light novel. Um, oh god, that is a tough question.
See,
Um,
for me, there's a lot of animes that I've seen because while I'm really into light
mhm,
novels now, I've only been reading light novels for a little over a year. I think my
mhm.
very first light novel series that I read, in its entirety, as far as fully translated, publisher translated light novels, was Tensei Slime. I started that at the very end of 2019, beginning of 2020. I read that, and I've read quite a few other series since then. But a lot of the animes that I have seen, I haven't gone back. Excuse me. I haven't gone back and watched, or I haven't gone back and read the light novels for those series, even though there are some that I want to go back and read, right? I've got such
Mhm.
a backlog of things that I need to read that I kind of have to pick and choose. So for anyone listening that's not a connoisseur of anime and light novels, or kind of a borderline otaku, if that term is okay for you, um, like are these differences, would they make a huge impact on like your normal, just everyday person that just likes to watch anime, or is it just more specifically for those that are really into
So,
everything anime, everything light novel?
I would say, it's definitely down to personal preference. Um, if you enjoy reading more, you're gonna enjoy the light novels more. Which is generally for me. I enjoy reading more than watching. So, I will generally prefer the light novel or the web novel. If you prefer to watch this goes back to the whole argument of sub versus dub.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because it's about how much attention you kind of need to give it.
Right.
But I will say that it finally, because I've been thinking about this since you asked me the question a little bit earlier. An anime that I would say is better than what it's adapted from. In this case, I'm going to go with a manga. Is My Hero Academia. I think that is a better anime than it is a manga. Like the manga's not bad. The manga's really good. But the anime kind of elevates it for a couple different reasons. One of which is the soundtrack, and a soundtrack can really break or make an anime.
Mm-hmm.
For example, I don't know how many people who are listening have listened to the different versions of Dragon Ball Z. If you're not aware, there are two audio tracks or soundtracks, sort of, for Dragon Ball Z. You have the Japanese soundtrack and the American soundtrack.
Mm-hmm.
And the Japanese soundtrack is much more light-hearted. It's more in style with the original Dragon Ball
The NA one
kind
just
of
seems
themes.
more rock.
Right. And so like I would say that is one where the soundtrack for North American Dragon Ball Z is great. Like the Cell theme is just fantastic in that version, and every time that I see Goku go Super Saiyan 3, the soundtrack for that scene is just great.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but you do have minor differences, between that, and so it really comes down to personal preference. There might be some people who prefer, the Japanese track
Mm-hmm.
over the North American one.
Not to switch gears, but you said the difference between like the North American version of an anime and the Japanese version of an anime. I
Mm-hmm.
have always found, and this is just a general rule of thumb from my opinion, because I have seen a lot of anime, both Japanese and North American. And I always feel like the Japanese have more, even though I can't understand the Japanese and I have to read the
Mm-hmm.
subtitles, I just feel like the voice actors come across conveying a lot more emotion and a lot more feeling compared to American voice actors.
And
A lot of the American
yeah,
voice acting that I hear, they either make the characters sound different than one of the prime examples is that I can think of that's a real good example for my perspective is Ichigo from Bleach. We
mm-hmm.
talked about that a little bit earlier. The Japanese version of Ichigo is still kind of non-intelligent, right? Because
Yeah, he's goofy.
he
Yeah.
has moments where he's goofy, where he kind of acts like he doesn't know what he's talking about. But when it comes to like his friends and his fighting, he's very serious and he's no longer joking around.
Mm-hmm.
And that aligns with the animated, figure that is presented as Ichigo. You know, his facial expressions, his body language, his attitude. The Japanese fits that very well. But in
Mm-hmm.
the American version, they make him sound like an idiot all the time. Like, to me, that's how he sounds all the time. He's always goofing off. He's always cracking jokes and just being a clown when that's not how they really portrayed him in the Japanese version.
That comes down to really to two different issues,
Mm-hmm.
uh, in my opinion. So you have one is the culture of voice acting in Japan and in America.
Mm-hmm.
In Japan, uh, you have you have voice acting schools where you pursue this as a career, right? Whereas here in America, oftentimes those that become voice actors, they started as hobbyists, right? They did it
Mm-hmm.
because they enjoyed it. And it's not necessarily that, I mean, I like that they have passion for it, but sometimes you don't get some of those nuances.
Right.
And it's unfortunate that some of the best voice actors, you know, in my opinion, in the country did not start as voice actors. Like you have Mark Hamill, one of the best voice actors I have ever heard. He started as just a traditional actor. And so a lot of the times when I see some of these hobbyists that are doing voice acting, they're just saying the lines.
Yeah, they're just reading the script. They're not giving it that emotion, that feeling that
Right.
they're just reading the script.
And so that's why like I love okay, so there's very few things in terms of anime that I can listen to both English audio track and Japanese audio track and not have a preference. One of those that I can do it almost consistently is the film's Studio Ghibli. So Princess Mononoke, Spirited Away, Nausicaa of the Winds, those I don't mind which version I'm listening to. And that is because the people they have being the voice actors for those movies are generally actors. So
Mm-hmm.
they've gotten used to expressing themselves with their bodies and their voices. And to them, when they're in the recording booth, it's no different than being on stage.
Mm-hmm.
They're still going through all of the motions, you know, trying to emote with their face and, their body rather than just reading the lines, which I see, especially when it comes to anime shows.
Mm-hmm.
One anime I'm going to bring up that is probably, in my opinion, one of the worst contenders for this is No Game No Life, in which I've seen behind the scenes of the actors or the voice actors recording their lines, and there's this one scene that they were recording that's a very emotional, and the character is supposed to be angry, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the actress that's giving that at that moment is having the time of her life. You could tell. I mean, she's smiling, she's happy, which is great. I'm very glad that she's passionate about what she's doing and that she wants to give it that thing. But it comes down to the fact that you can kind of hear her tone
Right.
in the voice, so it sounds happy, because that's a very hard thing to push down. It's kind of the same way in some of the old Disney films like Beauty and the Beast. You can hear sort of the facial expressions that the characters are making.
Right.
Um, and and so in my opinion, that kind of detracts a little bit from the finished product,
Mm-hmm.
a little bit. And that's just the culture. And then the other part that it comes down to, about which product is better, is localization, and that can be hit or miss, because a lot of the times, these Japanese animes will have jokes that are very much based on Japanese culture,
Mm-hmm.
um, which, unless you have lived in Japan, you are not going to get. And
Right.
so you have an entire, section of the translation process is changing that so that it can be understood, in the new language that you're trying to tell.
Do you think it
And
has
so,
anything to do with like the high turnover rate that they have for animes in America?
yes and no. They definitely, I would say, for that high turnover rate, they're not putting as much effort into the localization as they should be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this is not actually technically an anime; it's a video game. There's a video game called Mugen Souls, which has one of the worst localizations I've ever seen. So much so that I play the game with the audio off
Hmm.
entirely because I just cannot stand it. And there's there's a series of honorifics in Japanese when you're talking to someone. The same way that you call someone Mister or Mrs. In English, and it doesn't directly translate into English, but each one of those honorifics has a very specific connotation that goes with it. So this is, for example, this is like Sasuke-kun, or Naruto-san, or Sakura-chan. You know, and so those have very specific connotations.
Mm-hmm.
And this game, the way they had decided to localize it, there was a character that used very familiar language. He used Chan with everyone, essentially.
Hmm.
And so what they did is they would take the character's name. So, for example, there's a character named Shushu in this game. And whereas this character calls her Shushu Chan, they changed it in English to Shootchers to try and make it kind of like a nickname. Or there was like Ryota-kun, and they changed it to Ryotes. And that doesn't work, in my opinion, because first of all, I don't know about you, but I've never really seen anyone here in America ever do that.
No.
With changing the names like that to denote familiarity.
I mean,
So it
other than people that are, I've seen people like, not with me, but with other people. Like I've known some coworkers that have done it, but their
mhm.
intelligence level is very, very not high.
And so you have this problem with they're localizing it so that people can understand it without having to have the knowledge of Japanese culture, but at the same time they're missing the mark
Right.
because they're localizing it, but not well. And there is an example of, sometimes you can go so bad it's great.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there was an anime that when it was localized, it was it was a terrible localization. And in fact, it's so bad it changes the entire tone of the show. And I believe, if I remember correctly, this show was called Ghost Story, which
I may have seen this.
the original is much more serious,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of tone, but the localization is very comedic, in terms of where, like, when a character like sees someone, he's like, "Well, what you doing, bitch?" Which you would not expect to see from somebody at that age group, because he was supposed to be like 12. Um, and so, yeah, localization and culture differences really have to do with the majority of that transfer. And you have to have, in my opinion, somebody in charge of it who, one, loves the product. They really have to like the product initially.
Mm-hmm.
And this comes back not just to like Japanese manga and stuff being brought here, but I would say movie franchises. Look at Marvel, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Marvel franchise has been wildly successful, and I would say that one of the main reasons why is the person who is heading it is a fan of Marvel.
Right.
He loved the Marvel superheroes. He grew up with them. And then you have the Star Wars movies with Kathleen Kennedy, who she might be a great producer, but you can kind of tell she's not a Star Wars fan. She's a businesswoman. And so you get this disconnect, right?
What's the difference
Uh,
between passion and collecting a paycheck?
right. And so really to have somebody in charge of that localization product or project that actually, loves the original project can be very important. So I'm going to bring up the Final Fantasy games, right?
Mm-hmm.
The localization for those is generally, I'd say, pretty good. You know, it's not terrible. I mean, you do have some things. In Final Fantasy X, you have the infamous laugh, but that could be, talked down to like that was just a bad day.
Mm-hmm.
The overall product, I'd say, is still very good, very polished, because the people who are working on it, not just when they made the game, but when they were translating it and localizing it to America, were passionate about that franchise.
Right.
And and you can always feel the passion in a project. Whether or not you realize you're feeling it, you can always feel it. So like the movie The Martian is one of those movies that you can really feel the passion. Everybody that was on that project wanted it to succeed, and you can tell.
Right.
But sometimes you get people that, like you said, they're just trying to collect a paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
It's just their job. So they're they're not looking at the soul of the product.
And you see that, I think you might even see that a lot in reoccurring actors that, like, we've talked about this, and I can't remember if it was the last podcast or the podcast before. We talked about movie franchises that went beyond their limitation. Like
Right? Yeah,
we had talked
yeah.
about,
Mhm.
like Pirates of the Caribbean. They should have stopped after 2 or 3. They shouldn't have continued on for
Mhm.
forever as long as they did. And there's a lot of there's some actors, and I won't say any names, but there are some actors that have done a ton of movies, right? And it's like they probably should have stopped after 4 or 5 because their careers after that was just them trying to use their fame from the first
Mhm.
movies to sell additional movies.
Right. It's funny because like it takes a very specific actor to be able to do that and not, what's the word I'm looking for, make the audience feel slighted.
Right.
So like one of the best actors that I would say from the past 30 40 years, he has since passed, Alan Rickman. Played Severus Snape in the Harry Potter movies.
Mhm.
Uh, and this is generally like agreed upon. What people say is one of his best performances is as the sheriff of Nottingham in the Robin Hood movie. Uh, Back in, what was that, 98, sometime around there.
I'm not sure.
But the thing is, with that movie, everybody loves his performance, but it is well known he did not give a shit when he gave that performance.
Oh yeah.
No, he was unhappy either with the direction that the film was going or some other stuff, so he
Mhm.
phoned in his performance for that particular film, and it still ended up great. And it's very hard to do that as an actor. Sometimes you can very much tell when an actor phones in, excuse me, a performance. We had been talking about Die Hard earlier,
Mhm.
and when Bruce Willis is passionate about a project, he is a great actor,
Right.
but you can tell when he does not care.
Right.
The movie in particular that I'm talking about would be Cop Out.
I haven't seen that particular movie.
It's but you can tell that Bruce Willis does not care about that finished project or finished product.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, like, you see things like The Sixth Sense or Die Hard or Pulp Fiction, and the lengths that he will go to in order to put forth the effort to a project he believes in is drastically different than one that he does not.
Right.
And so you have that for certain actors, right? That can't really give something that they're not believing in. But unfortunately, with I mean, I know we talk about this a lot, but it really is, in my opinion, one of the recurring problems of our society, this instant gratification.
Uh-huh. And it only gets worse. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Because you're doing the project to get a paycheck. So, have you seen the Super Mario Brothers movie?
You talking about the one with the real life movie with the dinosaurs?
Yes.
Yes, I've seen it.
Okay.
I've seen it. I can't say that I was I haven't seen it in a long time, but I remember thinking to myself when I watched this movie, I'm thinking to myself, I didn't know that they made a movie based off this, and then I watched it and I was like, what did I just watch?
So everybody, okay, so they had some big name actors at the time in that movie. They had Bob Hoskins, and they had Dennis Hopper. I believe it was Dennis Hopper. Yeah. And there's a story that Dennis Hopper likes to tell about his children, where one of his children asks, why he played Bowser in that awful movie, and he responded with, "Well, son, I needed to buy you a new pair of shoes." To which the child responded, "Well, I didn't need shoes that badly."
That's funny.
And so, like, you have this thing where sometimes you're doing a project to get the paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you're doing the project because you believe in it, which can definitely change the end product. And it's unfortunate that, the more work you put into something, in general, the better it will be.
Right.
And that goes with anything, not just like making a movie, but like any project you're working on. The more time you invest in it, in general, it will be better.
Right.
But, and this is just way too prevalent in our society, we just want to finish it.
A lot of people just don't want to put in the work. I mean, if you think about it, this is a little off topic, but like, okay, so the main form of media, right? We've been talking about anime, we've been talking about manga, we've talked about movies. Before all of that, all you had was the radio, right?
Right.
People would listen to the radio, and they would have talk shows, they would have news shows, they would have music. That's all that they listened to. But most people didn't listen to the radio for multiple hours a day. They would listen to it maybe in the morning to get their news or in the afternoon. I remember my grandfather telling me stories about whenever he was real young, they would listen to like radio shows, which were like, like comedies or skits or something, but they were all visual. My grandfather, is old enough to remember like when they had to go to the movie theater to watch TV because they didn't have a TV in their home. They had to go to the movie theater to watch like news articles and new movies that were coming out, and stuff like that. Well, through the evolution, we got movies. And we had movies, and then we had TV shows, and the TV shows got shorter and shorter. And the movies, for the most part, on the whole, they were getting shorter. But over the last few years, they've started getting a little bit longer again. Movies in particular are longer. But TV shows are kind of like still pretty short. They're anywhere from 30 minutes to 45 minutes. But then... a lot of people don't even watch. I don't even know how many people I've talked to, online or on Discord or on Reddit. People I've just come into contact with, and I'm talking to them, and they don't even watch TV. They don't watch TV shows. They don't watch movies. They might go to the movies with their friends, right? And they might watch movies with their friends, but when they're on their own time, they don't even watch TV. They don't watch movies. What do they watch? YouTube videos. You know, watch YouTube videos. How long's a YouTube video? Not very long. You know, I mean, some of them are, yes, but some of them aren't. And then now the biggest thing that a lot of people watch is TikTok. TikToks aren't long at all. They're real short. Yeah.
So I'll be honest, that kind of goes back to Vine, right? Those less than 1 minute skits that people would put out.
Right. And it's just that consumer, that consumer mindset. They want to watch it. They want to get it over with, and they want to move on to the next thing. Just how much information can I shove into my brain in this 15-minute lunch break? Or how much stuff can I shove into my head while I'm going to the bathroom? Or whatever it may be. And, where does that leave us? What comes next?
Because I would say, like, we're definitely at a crossroads right now, right? Where, like, you have a lot of these quick fixes, but they're not very good. And so I would say probably in the next, 10 years or so, we're going to get a lot more of those quick fixes that are better. So, like, okay, so I've never actually stopped to look at some of this stuff, but one thing that's trying to do it is Quibi. Trying to do 10-minute episodes as like a TV show, just a little quick thing, which is hard to do, but I mean, I'm certain that, as time goes on, people will get better at it until it goes too far, and then people will be bored with it again. Because that's just culture, You have this, ebb and flow of interest in certain media.
Right.
And it just comes to kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? How present it is. For example, like you brought up radio, right? And how everybody used to listen to the radio. You had the 6 o'clock program where everybody was listening to that. Nowadays, you have hundreds of radio stations going 24/7. And almost nobody is listening to them.
Right. I mean, a lot of people don't even listen to radio anymore. You've got people listening to podcasts. You've got people that only listen to Spotify, only listen to Pandora. I mean, I fall into that category. I don't listen to the radio anymore unless I'm going somewhere in my truck for less than 2 or 3 minutes. If I'm going anywhere, like when I drive to work, I connect my phone to my truck stereo and I play Pandora. That's all I listen to. I listen to Pandora, and if I'm at home or if I'm doing a workout or anything like that, I listen to Pandora. Like
and yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like I can't remember. I was talking to somebody about it a couple of weeks ago, and they were talking about how, like radio stations and stuff like that. A lot of people, no, it wasn't radio stations. It was TV shows. They were talking about how their cable price had just went up because their cable provider had to increase the price because they're not getting as many ads. Companies aren't buying ad space on their channels anymore because nobody's watching cable TV. They're all watching YouTube. They're all watching, stuff on the internet. So there's no reason for them to buy ads if people aren't watching. And like, one of the things that comes into my head when I say that is that episode of Futurama where he's having a dream, right?
Oh, and it's a commercial.
And it's a commercial, right? How long until they're able to do that? Like I don't want to like do conspiracies or anything on the podcast, although we could. I mean, it makes for an interesting topic. But so just like earlier, right? We were talking about you had sent me that link to that game, Valheim, right?
Right.
I clicked on that link to go to the Steam store. And then the next time I went to YouTube, which was just a few seconds later, I looked at that, read it, went to YouTube. I already had ads, or I already had video suggestions for me for that game.
Mm-hmm.
You know, me and Demon have had conversations about stuff in the truck. Not even Googled it, not even looked it up, just had conversations about it. And then I start getting ads for it when I'm at my house, like on my computer.
It's like, I mean, we're at that stage right now in technology where, you know, you're like you're trying to make dinner or something, or you're doing something. You're looking,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I'm out of butter. Well, there's a button on your fridge to order butter from Amazon. Sort of.
Right.
I mean, not butter, but you know what I mean.
Right.
Like
No, no,
similar
I know.
things, or
I know what you're talking about. And what's crazy is in the consumer the consumer society that we live in, where we live, we can't. But like in Dallas, they have like 2 hour delivery.
hmm
You can order something from Amazon and have it at your doorstep within 2 hours.
yeah, those bigger cities have. I think it's called Amazon Fresh. Where they have
Mm-hmm.
those
Mm-hmm.
distribution centers. Where you can order, you know, stuff for your meals,
Well,
or
not only I'm not talking just meals. I was watching a YouTuber. This has been about a year ago. He's one of the YouTubers I watched. He had gone to Dallas for a convention or something, and he left one of his camera lenses at his house. And of course, he's a very big YouTuber, so it's not that big of a deal for him to just order a new camera lens, you know.
hmm
Well, he ordered the camera lens and he had it at his little apartment that he had rented within 2 hours. He had it within enough time to go to the event. Of course, this was all pre-COVID, obviously.
right.
But that to me that's just crazy, you know. Like if I order a package, I've usually got to wait 3 or 4 days. Even with Amazon Prime, I don't
hmm
always get my package in 2 days. Sometimes it's 3 or 4 days,
Well, I
before
mean,
I
like,
get my package.
it's funny you bring that up because I do remember, 3 or 4 years ago where you'd order a package and you expected it to take 1 or 2 weeks,
Mm-hmm.
right? And now I've gotten used to this Amazon Prime that if I order a package and it hasn't come to me by the end of that week, I kind of forget about it.
Yeah. Or you get upset, one or the other. It depends on how bad you need the item that you ordered.
Because so I know I don't think you watched it very much, but I was watching Unis Honest
Never heard of it.
while it was going, and on there on what day was that? It was in December, but I can't remember which day.
Mm-hmm.
On the very last day of the channel, they were doing like a 12-hour. No, it was longer than 12 hours, but a very long live stream. And so I went ahead on that day, and I went ahead and ordered an Unis Honest sweatshirt with a design that I liked.
Mm-hmm.
And it got here um, last week. Almost 2 months afterwards, and I had just completely forgotten. It came in the mail. I'm like, what is this? And it's like, oh yeah, I
Yeah.
did order this.
See,
I mean,
I've
yeah.
never gotten that bad. Mainly because I track everything that I've ordered because I want to make
Mhm.
sure that I get what I paid for, you know. And
Yeah.
of course, I don't order a ton of stuff. I order quite a bit of stuff, but not like a ton of stuff.
Mhm.
Like nowhere near the amount of stuff that my mom orders. Golly, she orders like because of COVID. She doesn't leave the house much. You know, she goes to work and that's pretty much it. She doesn't like going to the grocery store and stuff like that because,
Mm.
she's got my grandmother living there with her, and she doesn't want to take the risk of, bringing COVID
Right.
to their house. So she orders a lot of stuff off the internet. I'm talking like she orders everything because Walmart does deliveries now. The Walmart in
Mhm.
town, it delivers to the house. So you can literally just order stuff from Walmart, have it
Hmm.
shipped to you. She orders like her groceries, water, her like protein shakes and stuff that they have there at their house, and like everything. She just orders that, and she's got packages coming in from Amazon, of little this and that, and just all kinds of different stuff. And I'm just thinking to myself, man, you can just order whatever you need, whatever you want, have it delivered straight to your house. You don't even need to leave your house. It's like
Right.
it's a hermit's dream come true.
Well, like, do you remember seeing that? It was a YouTube video. I think it was a couple months ago now, where the guy ordered a cup of coffee, right, and they delivered it by drone?
Hadn't seen that particular video, but I have seen some of the Amazon drone delivery videos.
Because that one he ordered it from like a coffee shop or
Uh-huh.
something, and by like little drone they delivered it to his apartment, in like 30 minutes or something. It was quick. His coffee was still hot, and it's just like, wow, like I'll be honest. Sometimes I go back and I rewatch the movie The Fifth Element with Bruce Willis,
Mm-hmm.
which I love as a movie. And I remember when I first saw that movie, some of that stuff in there, it just seemed outlandish.
Right.
But if you go back and watch it now, you see some of the stuff. It's like, oh yeah, no, I could see that. Like one of the things that they have in that movie.
Go ahead.
Sorry, one of the things they have in that movie that like I could totally see these days is essentially it was a food truck that would go from house to house. And like I think it was like a Chinese restaurant sort of thing, but it was like on a moving thing that would go from apartment to apartment, and people would order what they want.
Mm-hmm.
Which at the time it's like, well, why would you do that when you could just go to a restaurant? But like looking at that now, I can very easily see that.
Yeah, especially like in a subdivision or something like that.
Right.
It's just like it's like the food truck concept, but instead of you going to the food truck comes to you.
Right. And they had one of the things they had in that movie. I'm trying to think what it was originally. It doubled as a shower, but
it's been a long time since I've seen that movie.
But like I've seen a lot of these like saving space things, where it's like you've always had that pull down bed, but now you have it where it's an actual bed. It's not just like that crappy mattress.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You have there was a video I had seen on Reddit a couple weeks ago of a guy who he had his I guess he was in a loft because it was rather large and open. He had transformed a lot of his stuff into tables / shelves. So like it would be a shelf on the wall, and he would grab it and he would pull it down,
Mm-hmm.
and it would become a table. And then when he was done, he would just put it back up. And the way he had it set up, everything was always oriented up, so he never had to worry about stuff falling.
Right.
And we're just getting to the point where things that used to seem outlandish are just becoming more realistic.
Yeah.
Like for example, there's I don't recall who wrote it right now, but there was a short story that I remember having to read in high school. I believe this was our senior year. Which was essentially a snapshot of modern day life, except this was written like 100 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like surprisingly accurate, where it had, people had, they had a personal music system, or they had things to read books to them. And it was like, you're reading this like, wow, this actually is kind of what the world's like today.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, but the fact that this was written so long ago is fascinating. Like another example would be Jules Verne,
Mm-hmm.
right? Around the World in 80 Days, Journey to the Center of the Earth, or even 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Like there is concepts in there. This is in the 1800s that he wrote these.
Yeah.
And you have technology that's very similar to what we have today, being showcased.
Right.
And so I don't know. I know it was kind of an offshoot, but
I mean,
I'm very excited to see, what we will have technology wise.
Right. I mean, that technology is a fascinating subject, and that might be something that we can talk about in our next podcast. Not saying that we're finishing. I figure we can go for a little while longer, but that's something that we could cover. Is technology advancements. Or we could go ahead and talk about it today. I mean, it's only 9:00. I'll kind of leave it up to you.
I'm good for a while longer. It depends how much longer you have.
I mean, I've got I figured I'd go until about 10. But okay, well, let's just continue on the technology path since we're already on it. One of the things, and I think I brought this up before. I don't know if I brought it up on the podcast or if I've just brought it up with you when I'm talking about in real life stuff. But one of the things that always fascinated me growing up was NASA and in space travel, the rockets, the boosters, and everything like that. And in my lifetime, I never even considered the concept of a rocket thruster that would come back to the platform and land itself.
Right.
We have that technology. That technology exists right now. And I never thought that would even be remotely possible.
Yeah. I mean, like, it's very interesting. I mean, my mother's not that old, but it's very interesting just the stuff that she's witnessed. Right? She was able to see the moon landing, and to see that kind of project where you had the moon landing, where that was a very in-depth process to getting to the point that if we wanted, we could send regular satellites to the moon. Especially because we could cut down costs with a reusable rocket, is just amazing. We are on the precipice, I would say, of having an actual manned mission to Mars. So that is possible now. When I would say maybe even 10 or 15 years ago, it was not. Because, that would be pretty much like an 18-month trip. It's a very long trip just to get to there. But with some of the stuff we've had in power storage in the last 10 years, in computation last 10 years, and just food storage, that becomes much more possible.
Right. Another thing that I didn't think that we'd see in our lifetime is like battery, like, I don't want to say battery-powered cars, because we do have electric cars that are like, fully electric now. We had the hybrids that were like a gas-electric combo, but we have fully hybrid cars now. But one of the things that I think is crazy is like have you seen the Tesla battery packs that they have for houses that work with the solar panels? To me, that's mind-boggling that you could have this battery pack installed on your house that will gather electricity, and store that so that, like, if you have a decent sized battery pack on your house, that eliminates the need for a generator. Like,
and like batteries, you're not wrong. Batteries in general in the last 10 years have come such a long way.
I mean, I remember back in the day running through double A's like nobody's business in my Game Boy.
Right. And now you can have, a pair of AA in a controller last you months.
Say for example, you had an emulator for a Game Boy on your phone. You can play that thing for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours, and even with the light on and everything, your battery on your phone can last anywhere from 8 to 10 to days, depending on usage. The biggest example I have is my iPad. I don't use my iPad a whole lot. I really don't. I love my iPad, but I don't use it a whole lot. But I can charge it to 100%, and if I don't use it for 5 or 6, 7 days, it'll still be in like the 90 percentile or the 80 percentile range. And that's without me even using it. Just in standby mode, it could be on and in standby mode for that long of a time period. To me, that's crazy. That we came from when I grew up to now, over that span of time period. That's not a long time. Like, we're talking 20 years. We went from that to where we are now.
I mean, yeah, just flip phone to smartphone. I mean, just the smartphone in general actually is an incredible technological accomplishment.
The very first iPhone came out when we were in high school. When me and you were in high school, the first iPhone came out.
The MP3 player was like a technological achievement. When you had the very first iPod.
Yeah.
Right?
Mhm.
That was, I mean, when we switched from CD players to an iPod, that was monumental.
When I was in junior high, I still had a CD player that I brought with me on the school bus
Mm-hmm.
to listen to music on. Not an MP3 player, a CD player.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's ridiculous. That was only like 10, 12 years ago.
Well, because like, and then like when you had some of the iPods come out originally, you had what, like you could have like 100 songs on there,
Mhm.
and you were like, oh my god, 100 songs. And now I remember one of my buddies from college was upset because he reached the limit of saved albums on Spotify, which is like 10,000 songs.
Mhm.
And I'm just like, Jesus,
I
where.
remember my very first iPod, I think, had. I don't remember exactly how much it had. I still have it. Not 100% sure where it's at right at the moment. But I believe it was a 4. It was a 4 or an 8 gig. And
Mhm,
I did not have enough songs in my iTunes library to even come close to
mhm.
filling it. Like, nowhere close to filling it.
Because I
And
mean, even if
that's just ridiculous.
sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying that's ridiculous, to go from then to now, and just the little things.
Because like, okay, so let's take a step back and let's look at USB drives.
Mhm.
Uh, when we were in our senior year of high school, I remember it was, a 2 GB flash drive
Mhm. Yeah,
was big,
was big.
and now we have terabyte size flash drives,
Right.
and it's only been about 10 years,
Okay?
and
You
you
want to
have
talk
this.
on
Sorry, go
that
ahead.
same? Oh, I was gonna say on that same token, right? You said flash drives. Flash
Mhm,
drive, a 2 gig flash drive was huge back then, right? I
mhm,
remember. I remember when I got an 8 gig USB drive that my grandfather bought me my senior year
mhm,
for school use, and I was just blown away that it was so much space. But you
mhm.
said they have terabyte USB drives. But even
Yeah,
more so than that, they have 1 terabyte micro SD cards.
I
One
know.
terabyte of information on a device that's the size of your thumbnail.
Mhm. And like, I mean, that comes down to, I mean, just better understanding of how to store information.
Mhm.
Because that's one of the things, that we're working on right now in quantum technology, is the transfer and storage of information.
Mhm.
Because, what we're trying to do is, I mean, because a lot of people, when they think quantum, they think like teleportation,
Mhm.
which in a sense is kind of what we're doing with information, but it's still amazing. Because I mean, like, can you imagine, and I'm sure this will be, actually, you know what, I'm pretty sure we will have this in the next 100 years. um, if you have like a game that you want to download that's like 300 gigabytes or something, and it takes you half a second to download because of quantum technology.
Mhm.
I mean, I still kind of remember, this wasn't that long ago. This, I think, was like 4 or 5 years ago. Call of Duty 3. I had to download it. It was a 70 gigabyte game, and it took me a couple days.
Mhm.
But I mean, it, just the way that we're understanding how electrical, like, information storage works is is amazing.
One
And
of
sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, you can keep going. I was just gonna say, talking about read write speeds, right? I
Mm-hmm.
remember I remember when I built my first computer. I remember thinking, that read write speeds were that my read write speeds were fast. You know, we were talking like you were talking like 100 megabytes a second or
Mm-hmm.
something like that. But then they come out with solid state drives. And solid
Mm-hmm.
state drives could read write at like 600, 500, 600 megabytes per second. And then now they've got M.2 drives that can read or write at like 1,200 megabytes per second, 1,400 megabytes per second. Like, your internet's not even fast enough to keep up with that. You're talking about
Yeah.
instantaneous transfer of, like, say you need to move a file from one place to another place on your computer. It's almost instantaneous if you're moving it to the same drive, like, or
Mm-hmm.
like vice versa. Like, if you're moving it to the same size drive, like, it's just so quick. The data transfer is just so quick. You were talking about internet connection speeds. Um, like, right now, my internet is not great. It's not awful, but it's not great.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have fiber. A lot of people in the United States have fiber internet cable, and we don't have
Mm-hmm.
that here. We don't have access to fiber optic internet where we live. But I know a lot of people, they have up to a gig of download speed, and
Mm-hmm.
the only real limitation is the host server that you're downloading from.
Mm-hmm.
If they can't handle the upload rate to upload it as fast as you can download it, I mean, I can download a 70 gig game in a couple hours
Mm-hmm.
nowadays, but that was unheard of. Unheard of. 10 years ago. I couldn't even
Mm-hmm.
imagine. I couldn't even imagine downloading a 70 gig game file in a day.
Oh my God, no. I mean, I remember having trouble downloading like a 50 megabyte thing in a day.
Hmm.
I mean, this was a way back when I had just the crappiest internet. But like it's like we're not necessarily that old,
No.
right? But like technology has progressed so far in such a small amount of time
Hmm.
that it sounds like what we're talking about should have been a generation ago.
There's a
And
there's a. Go ahead.
it was only 10 years ago. Like, I mean, when you look uh, just at the history of computers in general and how long they've been around, I mean, like, we had some of the, I mean, what was the 80s, the personal computer, when that first started happening, and
Mm,
now we're to the point we are now. But if you look at other areas of technology, like in terms of like engineering or stuff like that, it took us hundreds of years to figure some of this stuff out.
I mean,
And
if you want to get technical, everybody today, 98% of the human population has a personal computer in their pocket at any given time.
mm-hmm,
I mean, that is essentially what a cell phone is. A cell phone
mm-hmm,
can do it all. It can connect to the internet, you can send emails, you can send text messages, you can call people, you can look stuff up, you can download stuff. I mean, a cell phone in its simplest term is a handheld computer that you can carry around with you.
mm-hmm.
And
Because
I'd say at least 98% of the human population has one. If
mm-hmm.
you're above 5 years old.
it's
I
it's
mean,
really a necessity at this point.
I know
Like it.
6 or 7 year olds that have cell phones already. You
Mm-hmm.
know, my grandparents have cell phone. You know, um, it just everybody has a cell phone, and I think a large that connects into us as a society being a consumer society, being instant gratification. If I want the answer to a question, say for example, when me and you were in high school and we were talking
Mm-hmm.
about something at school, and say for example, I didn't know what you were talking about, or you didn't know what I was talking about, like we would have to wait until we got home, and then we would have to Google
Mm-hmm.
it, and then we'd have to like do our own research, and then we'd come back to school the next day and we would talk about it. Now, if you don't know the answer to a question, you can instantly pull your phone out, look it up, and have an answer within seconds.
Mm-hmm.
There's no need
It's
to wait. There's no need for that
yeah.
longevity. There's no need for patience. You can literally have it right then.
It's funny you bring up libraries because just the other week I was talking to my mother about how much libraries have changed because I remember back when I was much younger. I think this was actually in elementary school when they were teaching us how to use card catalogs,
Mm-hmm.
and card catalogs just aren't a thing anymore. I mean, it's all digital, right? You don't have to go and actually. It used to be, ladies and gentlemen, that there was just like a cabinet where you had to go through and actually flip through these cards
Mm-hmm.
to find the book that you wanted, and then it would tell you where that book is located.
The Dewey Decimal System.
Right, and that's almost obsolete.
Mm-hmm.
like, I mean, we still use Dewey Decimal System for organizational purposes,
Right.
but like, I still remember, they were telling us you're gonna have to learn how to do this because once you get to college and you have to write papers, this is gonna be indispensable to you. And I'll be honest, not once in my college career did I have to do that. I used online databases for most of it. I'm like, well, I'm searching for stuff with this subject, and it would give me books and articles that I could use
Mm-hmm.
from my computer. I didn't even have to go to the library
Right.
to get some of this information.
I'll never forget my ninth grade math class. I had a teacher the name by Miss Newton. She was really anti-calculator. She didn't like people using a calculator. And her biggest argument is when you're out in the world, you're not going to have a calculator with you all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Proves you
well,
wrong.
for the last 5-10 years, almost everybody has a calculator on them at all times.
And now at this point, like with Siri and
you can get graphing calculators and everything on your phone.
Yeah, but with digital assistants now, you don't even have to open your phone. You can just say, "Hey, what's this?" and they'll tell you.
Right.
I mean, you don't even have to take it out of your pocket anymore.
Right. Technology is crazy. If you wanted to know, say for example, you wanted to know a specific day. Say you wanted to know what day it was on March 22nd, 1994. I don't know why that date. I just randomly picked that date. So if that date has anything to anyone, I'm sorry. But if you want to know what day that was, right, you can type that date into Google and it'll tell you what day it was. It'll tell you whether it was Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I don't know what day that was. I have no idea.
Not only that, it'll probably tell you the weather from that day, the notable events from that day, who has a birthday on that day.
If you're famous enough to make the internet.
And that's just like, wow, like Google really has, in my opinion, changed the game, in terms of the information. Because, I mean, people say we're in the information era right now, and boy, do I believe it.
I mean, it's literally right there. I mean, anytime you want to know something, like literally, it's just a few taps away. Or as you said with Siri and Bixby and all these things like that, like it's right there.
I mean, I'm still kind of an old man, so I don't use the personal assistants just because I don't like them. And that's just because in my heart, when I think of digital assistants, I'm thinking of like old school sci-fi with complete personalities. When we get to that point, then I'll start to use them. But until then, I'm good with my old-fashioned typing.
For example, I just Googled my birthday. I won't divulge my birthday, but it was on a Monday. Like literally, just you could just find that out like super quickly. Like it's so crazy. I didn't ask Siri. I typed it into my thing because I don't have Siri. I technically I have Bixby, but I haven't set it up. So
I don't know. I know the day that I was born, simply because every time I talk to my mother, she will usually bring up that date and day and the time that I was born.
Yeah, see, if I talk to my mom about it, she knows what day it was and about what time I was born, but I don't know that she knows exactly what day it was. I was born about 6 o'clock in the afternoon.
I was born around 9:30 in the morning.
And I always remember that because every year I'd wake up early on my birthday and I'd be like, hey, it's my birthday. Do I get to open my presents? And she'd be like, well, actually, you weren't born until about 6 p.m. So you can have presidents. You can have your presents at 6. I'm like, ugh, fine. Whatever.
I hate technicalities.
Oh man, you know who the king of technicalities is? He's not watching this stream. If he was, he would get a big laugh out of this. But Demon, golly, is he the king of technicalities. You know how people, when they get really, really sleepy, they start laughing a lot, or they get really, like, for me personally, when I get really, really, really sleepy, I become really philosophical. Like, everything that I say just, like, to me, it just feels like it has deeper meaning. I've had conversations with people when I'm really sleepy, and they're just like, wow, you're very insightful. And I'm like, I'm about to pass out and go to sleep. I don't know what you're talking about. But when he gets tired, he becomes like a technicality Nazi. Like super extreme. Like you'll say anything. Like I can't think of a very good example right off the top of my head, but you say anything and he'll be like, well, technically, no. I'm like, excuse me? And like it just gets really, really crazy. But yes, technicality people.
It's funny. You were showing me some like D&D style YouTube videos, and so I was watching one where they're talking about the stereotypes, and you have the technicality lawyer or the rules lawyer,
right?
And there really is like nothing more annoying than hearing that. Well, actually, but what's worse is when you hear that and they are wrong.
Right.
There's sometimes I will scroll this subreddit called Confidently Incorrect. Which is, I mean, it's funny, but like some people get really snobbish about that kind of thing, and then they're just absolutely wrong.
Right.
And you could tell them they're wrong and why, and
they
we
still
just have a difference of opinion.
So one of the things that I always say, especially when I'm at work, is and I used to not be like this. I'm not exactly sure when I made the transition, or at least I don't think. Like I've always been very sure about my own opinions and my own knowledge base. Like if I know something, I'll speak up on it. You know, I'll talk about it. Or if I know a little bit about it, I'll give broad strokes, but I won't get into details because if I don't know the details, I don't want to make stuff up. So what I'll do, or what I normally do, is if I know that I'm right, or if I know about the subject, I'll say what I need to say, and then I'm done, right? And if they have more to contribute, or if they have a different viewpoint, it doesn't matter because I already said my piece, right? But I won't argue with them unless I know for a fact they're wrong. And at work, I am kind of, I don't know, I don't want to say that I'm a master in my element, but when I'm at work, I'm usually just in the zone, right? Like, I don't know what it is about being at work. I kind of wish that my home life could feel like my work life sometimes, because even though it's stressful, when I'm at work, I feel confident in what I'm saying and what I'm doing because I've done it enough times that I know how to fix stuff. There are times people will come to me with problems, and I'll be like, yeah, I know exactly how to fix it. Do this, this, and this in that order, and it'll work. And then they'll see me later on, and they'll be like, hey, I did exactly what you told me, and it fixed my problem. And I'll be like, I know. Like, that's how you fix that particular problem. That's how you do it. That is the system of steps to take in order to fix that problem. And when I'm at work, I'm in that zone. But if I don't know the answer to a question, or if I'm unsure, I'll tell them, I don't know. I don't know. I'll come look at it. I'll see if I can figure it out. But I don't know. Not until I come look at it. And I get a lot of people, you know, that have that sense of overconfidence. You know, they're like, oh, yeah, I can get it. I know it. I know exactly how to fix it. And then they'll work on the problem, and they don't even come close.
What I hate is when you have a problem that you don't know how to fix and nobody knows how to fix. Or like people will give you solutions and it just does not work. I'll bring up an example. For the last 2 or 3 months, the right shift on my keyboard does not work. I have tried every single thing. I have tried drivers. I have tried taking off the key itself. I have tried, doing all of that stuff, and nothing's working. So just for now, I'm just stuck with no right shift.
It's probably the switch is broken. Um, personally, I don't know what kind of keyboard you have, but I bought this keyboard. It's real cheap off Amazon, and it's a fully customizable keyboard.
Mm-hmm.
And if that shift were to go out right now, I can literally just pull that switch out and put a new switch in.
Because the reason why it's complicated is that it's a laptop keyboard.
Oh. Is it got
And
the?
so,
You said you took it off. Is it got the? Is it got the little metal deals around it, and then got the
yeah,
little clicky in the middle?
yeah,
Yeah.
it just doesn't register. Like, sometimes, things just don't work, or it could be a problem on the motherboard, or just the way that it's talking to each other.
It's possible.
It's just no way of knowing.
Right. Um, but like the thing about it is like in anything, it's that overconfidence, on that
Mm-hmm.
particular subject, and the technicality people, a lot of them don't really know.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them do. Don't get me wrong. Some of them do, but there's a lot of them that don't, and it's that overconfidence or that cockiness that kind of gets them in trouble in the long run. They talk a good
Right.
game, but they can't back it up with actions. And
Mm-hmm.
see, when I'm at work, I don't usually do a whole lot of talking. If they ask me a question, I'll give them an answer. But if they call me and they're like, "Hey, I can't fix this. Come fix it for me." Then I'm just going to go down there and I'm just going to fix it and I'm just going to leave because like if they're not interested in learning, I would love to teach them. I love to
Mm-hmm.
teach people things at work. I love to teach people things outside of work. But if you have no interest in learning, or if you have that fake learning, like, for example, there's this one employee that I work with a lot because they have a lot of problems. And they call me all the time and they'll ask me how to fix a problem. And it'll
Mm-hmm.
be the same problems. They have like a list of about 10 different things that they can never fix. And I'll come over there and I'll help them fix it. Help them, meaning I fix it for them. And they'll be
Mm-hmm.
like, "Oh, how did you do that so I can do it next time?" And I've been like, "You haven't been able to fix it the last 100 times. Why will the next time be different?"
Mm-hmm.
But because they asked, I'm a nice person and I go ahead and explain exactly how I did what it is that I did. And they go, "Okay, next time I won't need you. I'll be able to fix it myself." And the next time, Red Shadow, I need your
Mm-hmm.
help.
I will say that there are some people who learn much better by doing.
Mm-hmm.
Where like you can tell them all day how to do it, but until they actually try, they will not get it.
There's one process that this particular employee does, I would say at least once a day, if not every other day, and
Mm-hmm.
it's almost a daily. It's almost a daily task, but sometimes it's not a daily task because it's a change of something. And if say for example somebody changed it out the previous shift, sometimes they don't have to change it out. But
Mm.
when she changes this out, there's a specific way that you have to change it and string it up, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
it's basically it's basically like a register tape or a film tape, right? There's a specific way that it goes. They've been doing the job for a long time. We're talking 10 plus years, more than a
Mm-hmm.
decade. And they still cannot do that particular task even though they do it. They still cannot do it properly.
Mm.
Like I would say they get it right 5% of the time.
Hmm.
That is a huge margin of error, especially for somebody that's been doing that job for over a decade.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's some people that just they're not going to get it. They're never going to get it. One of my coworkers, I've always heard, you can't fix stupid, you know, but I've heard that saying a lot. You can't fix stupid. You can't fix stupid, you know. But he said something, and I like it better, in my opinion. And he said, "Stupid is forever." And I like that a lot more. Like, I like it more than You Can't Fix Stupid. Like, not to dog on anyone, that has a learning disability or anything like that. Those people, I don't think, the people that I refer to are people that could do it if they wanted to do it. They choose not to do it because other people can do it for them. That's what I mean by that.
Yeah, they're stuck in that toddler mentality of you tie my shoes.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I already showed you how to tie your shoes. You can do it yourself, but I want you to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
So, we've had plenty of technological advancements. We got to talk a lot about anime, novels, and manga. Mm-hmm. Is there anything that we want to talk about on the next podcast that you had thought about, or anything like that? I know our time is winding down here.
Oh, wow. Now that I'm actually looking at my list, there was one thing that I had wanted to talk about today that I didn't get to.
Is it a large topic, or is it something we can knock out in a few minutes?
Oh, I'm trying to think if we actually discussed this. Okay, so it went back to our adaptation because we talked about this. We brought up the topic last podcast,
and we got off on a tangent. It's good.
Yeah. I had a note about adaptation for Sword Art Online.
Mm-hmm.
In that is one of those where the anime and the book are vastly different.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just gonna knock this out real quick because it's not gonna take me long. The very first book was written as a standalone book.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's a complete story. He had everything he wanted in that book. And then after that, he wrote the second book of the series, which is essentially short stories that take place in Aincrad. At different times, because in the first book they're there for about 2 years. And so the second book has short stories that he just kind of wrote after the fact that invented new characters and did other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things about the anime is the anime tells it in chronological order. So it will start by telling some of the stuff that's in the first book, and then it will bring in one of those short stories from the second book, and then keep going. Mm-hmm. And so you have this problem, this disconnect of certain situations that the character would go through that would leave a lasting impression that you don't see. So like you had told me this. I think this was last week or maybe sometime off the podcast. That Demon was watching Sword Art Online Abridged.
Mm-hmm.
And funny enough, one of the things that particular series does better than the anime is to keep some of the flaws that the character has throughout. So like there's a small short story in the very beginning, like chronologically. It's before they're even in the game for a year, where one of these characters dies, and in the abridged, that affects him throughout the entire series. But in the actual anime, after that happens, it's never mentioned again. Like, it doesn't have the effect on him that it should. Mm-hmm. And that's because the short story that was written after the fact.
Right.
Now, I have heard, I can't remember what it's called. Essentially, the author went and he started rewriting the books, putting those in, and apparently that's better. But that's, I don't know, that's still weird for me because once you've written a story, it's out there. You can't really go and change it, in my opinion.
Right. Well, I think okay, so branching off of what you just said,
mm-hmm.
I think that there's a little bit, I don't want to say leeway, but I almost kind of feel bad in a way for some of these people. And let me try to give a few examples. Okay, so like, I know in American literature, or most of the American literature, a book is never published. A book never sees the light of day, right? until it's gone through some kind of publication process where they check it. And I'm not saying that there aren't things that slip through the cracks, but what I'm saying is they don't. The author doesn't just take the book and be like, okay, I'm selling it now. It's proofread. It's checked over. It's the publisher checks it, and if the publisher doesn't like it, they kick it back to the author. The author changes stuff, send it back to the publisher. The publisher doesn't like it or whatever. A lot of the Japanese light novels, mangas, and stuff like that start out as web novels. And the web novels, as far as I know, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, the web novels are just people that are writing and posting them online for people to read.
Pretty much. They're almost like blog posts.
They're like raw, unedited, raw rough drafts. Okay?
Right.
And so, me personally, I don't see anything wrong with changing the story from the web novel version into the light novel, because a lot of the light novels are published. And so they probably go through the same thing with their publisher. I'm not sure if the Japanese is as strict as, or maybe it is more strict, maybe it's less strict, I don't know. But I would assume that the publisher, either, like, if they get published, right, they want it to be a little more refined, a little bit more, I don't how to say that. They want it to be less raw and more a finished product, right? When it comes to web novel versus light novel, or web novel versus manga, and so what we get to see as readers is we get to see multiple versions, whereas in say, there's no telling how many rough drafts there were of some of the American novels. You know, I mean, some of our favorite books, who's to say that that's not like his 10th version of that book? We just never got to see the other 9 versions. You know, and like you said with the prequel things, there's no good way to do a prequel. The only good way to do a prequel is if you do the prequel before you write the series.
Right.
And the reason why I say this, and I could think of hundreds of examples of prequel movies, prequel books, prequel anything. There's something that they add that should have been addressed in the book somewhere, some way. Okay? For example, okay, I know that you don't really read, I know you don't read it and you're not interested in it, but Twilight, right? It was the 4-book series that came out when we were in high school. She wrote Midnight Sun, which is Edward's perspective of Twilight. Okay? There is a part, spoiler alerts to anyone that hasn't read this, there's a part in Midnight Sun where I don't know if you know anything about the series, but anyway, the main character, the male vampire main character can read minds. Okay? He can read the thoughts of others. Okay? All except for the main character, female, who's human, Bella. He cannot hear her thoughts. Throughout the first book, second book, third book, fourth book, from her perspective, he cannot hear her thoughts. And nowhere in any of those books does he have any explanation as to why he cannot hear her thoughts. Okay? Now, I don't know if it ever comes up after that initial conversation, except for once, and like in the very end of the third book, very beginning of the fourth book, he says, "I still can't hear you, and I have no reason. I don't know why." Okay. In Midnight Sun, his version, right? It's not a prequel. It's a companion novel to the first Twilight book. It's his point of view. Okay. Well, in his point of view that was written later, he can't hear her mind at all, same as in Twilight, but when he meets her father, the father's thoughts are very hard to hear. They're not clear. They're like, he can't, like with everyone else, he hears full sentences, just like they would be thinking in their head. He hears full sentences, or he sees little images, like anything that's in their head, he can see, right? With her, he sees absolutely nothing. He's completely blind to her. But her father, is muffled. He can just kind of get a feel for what he's thinking. He can't actually see the images. He can see a few of them, but not all of them. It's not concentrated like everybody else. That is never addressed in any of the other times, even though he learns this very early on, because he meets her father before she ever even introduces him to him. You know, to me that's a huge plot hole.
Yeah.
You know, when he meets her mother, her mind is also very interesting because her thoughts are like way louder than anyone else's that he's ever come across. Like, she's like, it's just like her mind is so much louder than everybody else's, but that never comes up either.
Yeah.
You know, why I add that little detail in a book that's supposed to be the same story but from a little bit different point of view? How does that never come up?
Well, that's why you really have to be careful, especially with companion books, where adding a little detail can break immersion. Like, you can have like a little tiny detail that you don't even think matters, but there'll be a couple people that they will see that and it will stick out to them. Now, one book series that I would say I think did it rather well is Ender's Game.
Ender's Game.
Ender's Game and Ender's Shadow, I thought worked very well because, like, one, they were telling two different stories. Like, they're set at the same time.
Right.
But the story of Ender and the story of Bean are very different.
Right.
And so even though they're happening at the same time, you know, and they're doing some of the same events, their perspectives are very, very different.
It was funny.
And they're looking at things in very different ways.
It's funny because literally the entire time I was talking about that was my second example was Ender's Shadow, Ender and Ender's Shadow. And what's very funny about that is not only was I thinking about that, but it also ties into one of our previous topics where we were talking about continuity between books and movies. In Ender's Game, the movie, in the books, Ender doesn't meet Bean for a while.
Not until he's in the dragon.
He's already right. So Ender doesn't meet Bean, I don't think, until I think he sees him once, or maybe twice. Bean sees him, right? But I don't know that Ender sees Bean because I don't think Bean was ever in Ender's vision, quote unquote. Like, he was in the background, but Ender didn't know him, so it was never mentioned, right? Until he was in Dragon Army. But Bean knows about Ender because Ender's like the best. When he gets to the school, Ender's already there.
Right.
Well, I'm pretty sure in the movie, it's been a little bit since I've seen the movie, but I'm pretty sure in the movie, Ender and Bean are on the same shuttle to the battle station, to the battle battle school.
Yeah, and they become like friends on the that shuttle.
Yeah, because I remember Bean turning to him and he's like, "Hey, you got a name?" And he's like, "Yeah, it's Ender." He's like, "Well, what kind of name is Ender?" He's like, "I'm Bean, you know, ain't worth a bean." And it's just like the little continuity, you know, kind of continuity error right there.
And sometimes, like, those errors, they really do stick out. Like, I'll say one that always kind of stuck out to me in a series that I like is Psych. Where kind of in the first season they mentioned something about Gus's family. And then, like, so one of the things is when he first meets his parents, he says that you know, he's 29 years old and he knows they've only been married for 28 years. To say he was born out of wedlock. And then you have a few seasons later, he has an older sister. Still between the two same parents. And it kind of, like, throws a wrench in that moment, right? Because that moment where he's saying, you know, I know that you two aren't perfect.
That's kind of interesting. Because I've seen Psych like 3 times and I've never noticed that.
It always pops out to me. Because, you know, that point is when he's saying that in the first season. He's saying, I know you're not perfect. Don't expect me to be, sort of thing. And then you have later in things, well, you have this, so it's very obvious that they weren't perfect.
Right,
So it
right.
kind of, that always jumps out to me. And some other people, like you say you never noticed it.
I've never noticed it.
Yeah, that's the thing that pops out to me every single time. And I guess it's just dependent upon, each person's individual tastes and what they notice when they read or when they watch something.
One more example, and then I guess we'll wrap the stream up. And I just thought of it while you were talking about Psych. And what's funny is it doesn't have anything to do with Psych. Is the Immortal Instruments,
Oh yeah,
the
yeah.
Mortal Instruments book series. I really enjoyed the book series. I
Yeah.
thought it was very good. I think I've read all of them, unless they've come out with more since I read the last one that I read.
I think they've come out with more since.
Think I was like on the fourth or fifth, but I don't know. I don't even know how many there are. To be honest with you, I'd have to look it up.
I really only distinctly remember the first 3.
I remember the first 3, but I was thinking that they come out with a couple more since then.
Yeah.
And I read those as I was thinking I read those as well, but I could be misremembering. But the movie was, if you compare it to the book, to me personally, I thought the movie was terrible.
I saw the movie and I said, that's not the book, right? Like, it had the same title, but I thought that's not what it's about.
I mean, it loosely follows. There's 6 books in the series. I have read that one. Oh, okay. I've read 4. I've read 5 of the 6. I just haven't read the last one. Okay. I just got to get the last one and read the last one. Well, I'll probably need to reread the first 5. So in the movie, they've got everything, but to me, it felt like the pacing was off. And then, like, they never made another one. Obviously, I guess it was because it was a flop. I assume they never made a second one,
Mm-hmm.
And they made a TV show out of it, but it doesn't have any of the same casts or any of the same characters. I never watched it or read it, but they also made a TV show out of the book series Maximum Ride.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was one more that I was thinking about that they did, and I'd actually seen that one, but I'm blanking. I had it and it slipped through my fingers. I don't know. Well, I guess that just about wraps up this episode of the podcast. Did you have any ending remarks?
No, I did not. Did you want to try and set a topic for next time? Because I know I kind of came in and stopped that with Sword Art Online.
No, you're fine. I don't really know what I want to talk about next time. We've covered a lot of stuff in the last few podcasts, and part of me wonders whether we should, since this is still in the testing phase. Our viewers are more than welcome to comment or tell us anything that they think. I know we have a few different people that we have watching this that are close friends or family. Should we talk about what we're going to talk about the next time, or should we just leave it open to interpretation? Next time on the we'll see you next time on the podcast, and then not give them any hints as to what we're going to talk about. Because
I gotcha.
I don't always know what I want to talk about, because some of the stuff we talk about is off the cuff.
Right.
A lot of it is non-structured. I mean, we started off with the kind of a brief basis, and we talked about that for a little while, and then we segued into all kinds of crazy stuff, and then we kind of brought it back to the original at the end. And I kind of like that. But there's no reason we have to set a future topic.
Okay.
We could talk about it through the week and try to decide, or we could just talk about random stuff. We could talk about favorite characters of book series or favorite characters of anime. Like, we don't always have to talk about huge topics, quote unquote. just give
societal
Yeah, we could just
failings.
give. Yeah, but that's so much fun though. I love talking about society, failing society and stuff like that. Like it's one of my personal areas of interest.
Well, I if yeah, okay, I'll talk to you about something after we're done. But we'll go ahead and start wrapping it up here.
All right,
So
to all those out there that have a loved one or someone special in their life, make sure you wish them a happy Valentine's Day. That is today. If you're listening on another day, well then it's no longer Valentine's Day and this does no longer apply.
yeah, so Red Shadow, you complete me.
Thank you very much, Aeon, Wraith. I appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Thanks for joining us. Um, Again, we try to keep this pretty regular. Around Sundays between we'll start between 8 and 9, and generally try to. I mean, we went a little longer today. Just because we got into a groove.
And we had to
And
make up for last week.
yeah, yeah. So thanks for watching. I will be uploading these to my YouTube channel, Aeon Wraith. Even though this is still, kind of our testing phases, I'm still uploading them for posterity's sake, and just to get in the practice.
Right.
So thank you for joining us. We're gonna go ahead and sign off here. Hope you enjoyed it. Please, come see us next time. Do you have any ending remarks you want to bring up?
No, I think that just about sums it up. We hope you enjoyed, and we'll catch you on the next one.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.